Okay, we're recording. So, Bev, I'm so glad to have you with me and willing to share your thoughts with us today. And I know that you served as high school ministry leader for years until Dr. Richard Strauss was your pastor, and I think he invited you to come into women's ministry. So, I just love for you to kind of share with the women a little bit about what the context was like in the church that you served in, the size of the church and kind of where you were located. Um,
Well, we are in Escondido, north of San Diego. It's a large church, and we're on our fourth pastor since I've been there. So we have longevity in our pastors, and it's really wonderful. We got a new young pastor in, and the whole church looks different now, but it's great to see how God uses these different men in different ways. And not everybody agrees with each one, but that's okay. It's all about God's word and what we really need to be listening to, and it becomes a personality thing. That's what I've seen. And that's true in women's ministries too. Women, if they go to a small group and they don't like the leader, they usually don't go back, because of our personalities. So we saw that over the years. Right now, our group our women's ministries is in transition. They're on the fourth director since I left. And, it's different for each one. I think ministering to women today is really different than what I had the joy of doing.
So how long did you serve as women's ministries director?
Yeah, I wrote that down because I always forget. I worked in women's ministries for 18 years, and it was just a joy. I didn't really want to retire, but our church kind of has a policy at 65 you retire. So I worked in the high school ministry 20 years, just more as an event planner and coming along, discipling some of the girls and things like that. But I loved the women's ministry. I had a great board of women around me. We're still friends. We meet for lunch once a month, and it's just great to see how God has blessed each one of us in different ways.
Great. Well, thank you for taking the time to let me interview you and to share your heart with us. And I was wondering, I talk with a lot of women, and some of them really struggle with feeling like they are not enough. They're not trained. They're not feeling like they really have the expertise or what's needed to be in ministry, yet it seems like God has called them. Did you ever struggle with feeling like you weren't enough?
Well, yes, because when I was hired, one of the pastors didn't feel like I had enough training. I didn't have the Bible school training that a lot of the gals have in women's ministries. I was not a Bible teacher, loved God's word, but I wasn't a Bible teacher. And so I did struggle with that, but I surrounded myself with women that loved doing that, and use those kind of women in my ministry all the time.
So do you have like negative voices in your head that you had to deal with? Or were you free of having those negative voices that said you're not qualified?
I'm pretty free from that. Yeah, I'm a pretty positive person, and look for how to do things a different way. If you can't do them one way, there's another way you can do it, and God will help you through those times. So yeah, I didn't struggle with that, and probably because the women I had around me too really wanted me in that position, which was really great to see them backing me.
Yes. Talk with me about that. Talk with me about, having a team and the importance of that.
Yeah, we met once a month, and these were gals that were members of the church and involved in women's ministries, love women, and we would plan the special events. We would make sure that all the ministries are staying on track, going the same way, and each of them had 3 or 4 ministries that they would check with those leaders, because we got pretty large. At one time we had almost 30 ministries going. So yeah, I couldn't reach them all. I couldn't go to them all. And so the women did, and we started out having monthly meetings, and it got to be too much for the leaders. So we went down to about 4 meetings a year with all the team members, because it was just way too much. And the neat thing about that, there was a ministry for every woman in the church that she could fit into. And they were run by lay leaders, and they knew the direction of the church. That was my job, to keep them focused on where the church was going, and making sure our women were part of the whole church.
That's neat. How did you select the women who would be on your team? And and how many people did you have on your team? What did that look
One
like?
time I think we had about 8.
Oh.
Yeah, and they were usually gals that I would watch them. They would, come to me for things, and we'd start talking. You befriend them. We became friends. I mean, we are lifelong friends. And not that we do everything together, but when we connect, we're just right there together. And you have friends like that too. And anyhow, that's God brought those women into the ministry, and they were just a really great support team. I couldn't have done it without them. So.
And you said that you tried to have some younger women on the team. It sounds like you had people who were Bible study teachers and who had gifts that were not your gifts. So it seems like you really surrounded yourself with women who were maybe different or gifted in a different way than you were, but that were supporting you.
One gal still had a little boy at home, and she'd bring him with his lunch, and he'd sit and play in the corner. And, it was like that. And we had some older women too, and they kind of got tired, because we would do the women's retreats, special events. We would gather other women to help us. But, it was a real ministry to be on the women's ministry leadership team. That was a team within itself. So, and we did meet once a month, that team did. So it was good. It was really good. And praying for the gals. No, that was very important.
Well, talk to me a little bit more about that. I was curious about, how did you maintain your spiritual life as you were so busy pouring out into the lives of so many different people, and you were a mom and a wife, and talk about that.
Well, I only work part-time, 20 hours a week, and plus when there was extra events. But I think to have a mentor that you can go to and talk to, and I had a couple of those. One was Mary Strauss, our pastor's wife back then, and boy, she could give great advice, and really, was a prayer warrior for me. So that was always good. And I think, to be honest with the team, when I was struggling, hey, I'm struggling in this area, I need you guys to be praying. And so we've always been honest with each other and share those things. I don't feel like people in the church put me on a pedestal because I wasn't a spiritual giant. I was one of them. I'd be out there right with them, so and I'm still that way today. I go and I'm, there with my friends, and have a lot of older women that are friends there. A lot of them are passing on now, which is sad, but they're with the Lord. And I don't know what God's got for the next generation, and that probably all of us wonder about that, for these women that are raising kids in today's world. And are their kids going to keep going to church? Do they need a church? Do they love the Lord? So we all have those things that were that are still burdens in our hearts and lives.
Did you ever face criticism? I mean, did you ever have people in the church be disgruntled about something or people complaining about something? And how did you handle that?
I was fortunate. No, I didn't.
No, really?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Yeah, really fortunate that we didn't have a lot of complainers. And in fact, I really can't tell you about one, that only one that didn't listen to me when I was talking to her, and we took care of that one. But I shared that with you before, so we're not going to go into that one. But anyhow, no, I think the women in the church respected us
Uh-huh.
and knew that our thoughts and our hearts were what we felt God wanted for the women, and so they really would join in.
Hmm.
And it was a great time. God really blessed us.
Yeah.
Really blessed us.
Oh, that just sounds like a wonderful place to serve, that the culture of the church was such that the women were all supportive of the
Right.
leadership and they weren't complaining and fussing about things. And so that's beautiful. That's the way it's supposed to be.
I know, which is unusual for a lot of churches.
Yes, yeah, that's great.
So yes.
As you look back, what would you say brought you the greatest joy in ministry?
I think it was seeing women serve and
Oh,
using their gifts and, bringing new women in and watching them serve and learn and grow.
hmm
I never felt like I had to be up front. That wasn't my thing. I could do it if I had to, but it was, let's get somebody else this time and let the women get to know. And that was always my motto. Let somebody else do it. Let's train them and let them do it. So I tried to stay behind the scenes at women's retreats. I didn't MC. It wasn't my thing. I'd used other women that had gifts to do that. And so my greatest joy was seeing these women develop and use their gifts.
That's
That
awesome.
was really a joy.
Yeah. So it sounds like
Yeah.
you had some mentors who really poured into you and prayed for you and loved you and gave you good advice, and then you kind of used that and you were that advocate for other women and helping them
Right.
use their gifts and encourage them along those lines. And I think that's
Yes.
one of the things that New Wim has done for me personally, is it has given me friends outside of my local congregation and women who would pour into me, who would pray with me, who would give me good advice, and I so valued that. What did you?
Oh, I love doing WIM.
Uh,
And when we had it down here, that was just a joy, real joy.
yeah. So the way that it can, other women can really speak into your life and
Yes.
can help you
Yes.
to see gifts that God has given you that you don't even see yet, and to affirm that and to kind of call that forth out of, as women are serving, and to love them in those places. That's really great. Um,
Yes.
yeah. What does ministry look like for you today? You've been retired for a while, but you're still going to the same church. I love that. And you've weathered the storm of new pastors and new women's ministries directors, um, and you're still loving Jesus and you're still serving him. And what does that look like today?
Well, I'm not super active at church. I am involved a little bit with the seniors,
Mhm.
and they'll ask me to do things, but I'm feeling my age, and not quite up to. I just led a trip back to our Arkansas, well, where the Ark is. Arkansas, is that in wherever they have Noah's Ark? Anyhow, we took a trip as seniors back there and they put me in charge of that. And I said, I'm feeling past that age of doing it, but it all worked together.
Mhm.
And took my mentor with me, Mary Strauss. She was 90 90 on the trip, 92 on the trip, I think. She said, "This is my last trip, Bev." And I said, "Okay." So we had a great time and I did that. So I'm involved in some of the senior activities and trying to get the senior women to go to the women's events
Mhm.
because they are really targeting the younger women, which is fine. I think they need to be, I'm not against that, but that means there's a lack of older women in the room. So I said, "Okay, gals, we're going." And we will go and sit at 2 or 3 of the tables. We usually don't last as long as all the young people do. But I want to encourage the younger women,
Mhm.
that we're there to support them.
Mhm. That's
And
awesome.
we
Yeah.
can't go and set the tables like we used to, but we can be there, we can pray for them and enjoy their events that they're planning. So that's kind of my goal. Plus, where I live, it's a senior community. So I've really decided this is a place I need to be serving people also and praying for people.
Mhm.
Because I have one friend that doesn't believe in heaven or God, and that's what her parents taught her, and she doesn't want to change. I'm praying, 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 and still being her friend, and God's going to use that somehow. I'm just trusting Him. How is He going to bring her to Him?
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's
She's got
awesome.
blue hair, and she's in her 80s. So, yeah, it's great.
Oh,
Anyhow, so that's what I'm doing.
uh-huh. And I'm wondering, sometimes women will talk to me and they'll say, "Well, what advice do you have for retirement?" I retired from my secular job a few years ago, and as you're kind of looking at that retirement, you're kind of wondering, and I'm wondering if you have any, as you look back and say, what has really helped you as you made that transition from working and being really involved at the church to being in retirement? Do you have any advice for women as they look in those years?
It's going. You're breaking up, Luann.
Okay, I'll ask you the question again. Um,
Hey,
so,
Robert. Well, I heard the question.
oh,
I
okay.
heard the question, but your voice is breaking up. I don't know if we're losing our connection or what.
It's just sometimes the internet does that. So it's
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So yeah. So what do we do? When we make the transition? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, any
Um,
advice? Yeah.
yeah, I think it's to stay faithful to God, and you still have to be in a church. You got to be fed.
Mhm.
And if you stop going, and my job's over there, I don't need to go anymore. It's like pastors that retire and stop going to church. That's not good for them either. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
and we need to be encouraged. I belong to a small group out here from our church, and try to be encouraged there. And when they're starting to find fault with the church, I always try to bring in something positive,
Mhm.
and because people do pick apart the organ and the music and things like that,
Mhm.
and just going, it's okay, it's only one Sunday that happens. So you just anyhow,
Mhm.
that's it's finding and using your gifts still.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that makes a world of sense because your call to serve Jesus doesn't end with your job. And
Right.
that it might look different in different seasons of our lives, but
Yes.
um, I think it provides meaningful work for us, and I think God's created us to need that, to be able to serve and to give to others and to use our gifts. So that's I think that's great advice. Um, I know that you lost your husband many years ago, and he was a godly man. I remember receiving the tapes that he made of all the passages of scripture that were promises of
Yeah,
heaven,
but
and what a wonderful gift that was. And so, talk with me a little bit about that transition for you of walking with him through his terminal illness and then losing him and then becoming a widow. What was that like for you?
Well, that was definitely hard. He was on the church staff. He was a business administrator, so I had lots of support.
Mm-hmm.
And when I brought him home from the care facility, because he wasn't being cared for the way I thought he should, I became his caregiver, and I'm not really a caregiver, but I learned to be, and God helped me through that time. And so that being out here in this senior village, I realized God's got me out here for a reason, to help some of these others that are not caregivers, that have a terminally ill spouse at home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy job,
No.
and you have to rely on the Lord to help you through that, and others.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's another reason I'm out here, in this village. So I look at that. I have one lady I pray for every day and pray with her, because she's not a caregiver and he's terminally ill, and it's difficult for her, and they go to our church when they can.
Mm-hmm.
So that was difficult, but then God did bring a gentleman from my youth into my life, and we got married, and I didn't have very many years with him because he was 11 years older, but the time we had together was full of joy, and we had a good time together, so you never know how God's going to direct your life and lead it. You just got to be walking in his way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that is just such a word of encouragement for us, and I love your enthusiasm, and you just exude grace and energy and love for Jesus, and um, not in any way bitter. I know that there are ups and downs, and you've gone through ups and downs as well, but it seems like you have been able to weather the storms and just can find goodness and beauty and joy in whatever season you're in. And I just think that's such a wonderful example.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's my prayer. That's my prayer, that God will be seen in my life, and that, Bev's been through this, and she still can be full of joy and have a good time. And living in a place like this, probably 50 people in here go to my church, which is nice, to have that support. But there's a lot of people watching us. They're watching to see how we live, and just to be able to share God's love with them too is very important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just I had a few notes that one of the things was to always make the women feel special, and that was one thing my women's ministry team tried to do. Whenever we put on an event or had something, we tried to have something special. New Women was good at doing that too. Women like to feel special, and then they keep all these little things around their house that become clutter. But anyhow, we love to have little things that make us feel special. The other thing is to train leaders. New Women was great at being able to train leaders, and I love that about New Women. I hope they're still doing that. To be creative and use the gifts of women that are very creative. You can usually find a spot to use someone if you're looking. And anyhow, that's really important. Seeing the women reaching out to other women, I think, is a key thing. And we took a team of women twice to Amsterdam and put on 2 retreats over there for missionary women. And that was such a blessing. Our missions department, because we had a large missionary thing at that time, paid for the women to fly to Amsterdam
Wow.
so they could be there for 4 days with us. And we put on a retreat. We washed their feet. We gave them pedicures, we did so many wonderful things for them, and it blessed us really more than them, even though they were blessed. We took things that they could take home. We took old suitcases full of everything we took, and then we gave them the old suitcases full of stuff to take to their mission field. And so, we got real creative of how can we bless people, and I think we need to encourage that with our women. Be creative, look for ways to be serving, look for these special places.
Oh, that's a
So
great idea.
I think that's about it.